Hello, this is the Backdrop Weekly Developers Meeting. It's January 12th, 2023, and it is the last meeting before the release of Backdrop 1.24. We've got a pretty good sized crew here today. We'll do some introductions. My name is Nate Lampton, quick sketch on the internet, calling from Oakland, California, and I'm a core committer and technical lead for the Backdrop project. We'll start off with Martin, and then we'll go to Jen. If you could do an intro.
Yeah, I'm Martin Price. I'm a developer in Northeast England, United Kingdom. Mainly work on Contrib, but I do the odd bit on Core as well.
Thanks, Martin. Jen, and then Tim.
Jen Lampton joining from Oakland, California, currently working on snippets on each issue in the issue queue to help with the blog post.
Excellent. Tim, and then
Yep.
Greg.
I'm Tim Erickson, St. Paul Tim, in Deerwood, Minnesota, and meet my Turkey brethren in the background. Maybe they'll be back. That's it.
Thanks, Tim. Greg, and then Justin.
I am Greg. I'm usually joining from Australia, but now in Greece. So many things to work on. Exciting. Yeah, I'll be around in the queue doing reviews and providing, trying to squeeze in bug fixes before the release.
Excellent. Thanks, Greg. Justin, and then Luke.
Justin Christopherson in Denver, Colorado. Help out with infrastructure and things when I can.
Great. Luke, and then finally Robert.
Luke McCormick, Cellier, some places on the internet, in surprisingly sunny San Ramon, California, where it's been raining heavily for weeks. Do marketing things occasionally, and if someone wants to root me in for promoting 124 and stuff like that, I have a little bandwidth.
Great. Thanks, Luke. Robert, and then Savasha, if you want to do an intro, I wasn't sure if you were going to be off mute or not, but Robert, go ahead.
I'm Robert Lang, bug folder on the internet in Altadena, California, which, like San Ramon, is surprisingly nicely sunny today.
Excellent.
Okay,
Thanks,
I'm
Robert.
Sarvasri, and I'm in Walnut Cove, North Carolina, and I'm just observing. I'm a site builder, not really a developer.
Awesome. Well, thanks and welcome, as always, to the meeting. All right. We have some contrib updates this week. Boy, do we ever. Jen, can you give us the rundown on new contrib projects?
We have so many new modules. So let's see. This week we have Bootstrap blocks, read more extra field extra widgets, CRM table prefixes, search API block, administration bar, views grouping, enabled modules report recipe, which I think we might have talked about last week, but still a lot of fantastic new modules this week.
Yeah, that's great. And those are the ones that have new releases.
Yes,
I
official
also saw-
releases.
Yeah, I also saw at least yesterday Justin Kaiser merged into new contrib projects just into the contrib group. So that usually means that there's some more new module quote releases, first releases coming down the pipe later as well. So
Two of those are here.
oh, excellent! Wow.
Yes, that was
that's
read
even better.
more extra field and field extra widgets.
Can someone please post the link to the agenda, either on Zulip or Zoom?
Yes,
or both?
sorry.
No worries.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, great. Contrib updates. Of course, thank you to all of our contrib maintainers and contributors that are making Backdrop better through add-ons. Checking to see, just out of curiosity, how close we are to 1,000 modules, because we're getting pretty close.
We're
1,000
over.
contrib projects. Oh, we went over?
Yeah.
Oh,
We
all
had
right.
a celebration on the day that we went past it. I think it was like 2 or
Projects.
3 weeks ago. Projects.
We
Projects,
have over
yes.
1,000 projects. I think we're still below
Which was the
700
1,000?
modules.
Yeah.
Which
And
one?
which one was it?
I got their book menus in, which was the 1,000th project in Backdrop.
You should get a prize.
Nice. I saw it was on 999. And I thought I'm gonna get it. It's Thanksgiving. They'll all be they'll all be eating their stuffing on turkey.
You are
so
right.
I'll sneak it in there.
Yeah, we I noticed I tried to find Nate somewhere on there to get a count as I was updating our backdrop slides for like, is there a way to count? But on GitHub, it's like 1K plus or whatever.
Yeah.
And I did find a place that does show a count, but we have a bunch of archived repositories, which were like old modules that ended up in core, like email and date and whatever. And I can't figure out how to get a count either with or without that. Like it gives you a number and I'm like, does this include this? Does this not include? Are these actually projects I don't know. So yeah, they're sort of, I might have to use the API to get the actual number.
Yeah, I was about to say.
That's anyway. It doesn't really matter the exact number. It little less or a little over 1,000. It's still something to celebrate. That's wonderful.
Just briefly before we get too far, Jen, did you say that one of the new projects was a recipe?
Yes, it was the enabled modules recipe, which I think Tim made so that you can have a view that shows which modules you have enabled on your site.
Yeah.
Very good. Interesting. All right.
Excellent. Are you using any of the new views fields that were added in 124, Tim?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, well, now you can pull information out of the .info files in your views.
Oh, nice. Okay.
That's a completely obscure feature in my opinion, but I think it's funny that you just so happen to be fiddling around with that exact functionality. But yeah, there's a new field in 124 that lets you do that.
Cool. I'll have to add that.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So 124 is right around the corner. It will be coming out in just 3 days on Sunday, January 15th. We have some release preparation to do for that. I think it would be a good idea for us to go ahead and start with creating the release issue if we haven't done that already for the 124 release. And because it will also be the end of the 123 cycle, except for security releases, 123.2 will also be coming out at the same time. So we need an issue for that as well. I think that there's a good number of fixes that are in even the 123.2. Let's see. Oh, 11 fixes, plus there's also like 4 or 5 RTBC things that will also go in as well. So yeah, there's a good number of fixes that will go into both releases. Let's see, for writing our announcement blog post, I know Tim and Jen usually handle that sort of thing. Do we have anyone else? Luke, you mentioned that you might be interested in participating. Do we have a start on something yet for 124?
I don't think any of us have started it yet. I think Luke helped last time. Didn't you, Luke?
I helped in the past. Was that the last one? I'm happy to help.
Okay. Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
maybe we can.
and I'll take care of the roadmap pages.
Sorry, Greg, what was that? You'll take care of the what pages?
The roadmap pages.
Oh,
So we
roadmap
haven't-
pages. Yeah, excellent.
The changelog, whatever you. Yeah.
Let's see, the release notes on the preview release are in pretty good shape. I think I reviewed them when Jen drafted them on the preview release. Those will stay pretty much the same, I think, other than the last couple of fixes that went in. There is a discussion here about htaccess. htaccess got to change, not just in 124, but also in 123.2 to make it so that some of the disabling of executing PHP files inside of like the files directory got updated in htaccess. So there's a change to htaccess both in the root htaccess directory, both in the root and everywhere else that we have htaccess files, in the private directory and in the public files directory as well, I think. And Yeah, that's usually when htaccess changes happen, we just put a note in the release notes saying that there was a change. This particular suggestion, it affects some sites, and it's a security hardening. It's like it would be a good thing to do if you're running PHP 8 or higher. And I think we have some question about like how can we make that more reliable? Like how can we make it so the htaccess file updates are more obvious than just like putting a note in the release notes? Do we have an issue even suggesting like automatically updating htaccess files?
We have one for automatic and one for notifying, figuring out a way to notify those that are updating through the UI that, hey, we just updated the call folder and we haven't touched settings PHP or htaccess. Although there was an update, right?
Is it this brand new issue that Jen just opened, 5929, or is there an older one as well?
I think that that was from last week. I just split it off from your previous issue, Greg. There was one that was print a message, and then mine was actually update the file. But that was not the one in file structure. It was just the root one.
Yeah. So the other issue is 5911, mate. Show a notice in the admin UI when htaccess robots.txt or settings PHP have changed.
Okay. 5911. Excellent. Okay, great. And okay, this is like and/or auto update when possible. Okay, so we kind of have like a general make it better and then a more specific solution, automatically update it. Yeah. Provide a message. Yeah, if we just did the provide a message thing, we really would only need to like compare what we have right now versus what they have. Oh, I see. But if there's customizations made, you would need to like silence the warning, basically, like say this is fine because I manually modified the htaccess file and I know that I did that and it was intentional.
The other thing that I was
and then you would need to unsilence it at some point if another change was made.
The other thing that I was thinking is that specifically for the change in htaccess, which allows things to work in PHP 8, we can just look for the line that is specific to PHP 8. And if the site is running PHP 8, only then say, hey, your site doesn't include that section, which is required. None of the settings will work because you only have lines for PHP 5 and 7.
Yeah, that's a good idea. And are you saying that we should only do that if they're also running PHP 8? Because it's really only relevant if
exactly.
PHP 8.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we're not going to let everybody know. We're just going to say, hey, you're running on PHP 8 and you're missing the directive in the htaccess file. This is what you need to add. And then maybe we send them off to a documentation or the pull request that had the change and say, this is what you need to add. This is where you need to add it.
Yeah, that's a good idea. There's a fair amount of stuff in the htaccess file. I wonder, like, if we extended that to everything that was in the htaccess file, I'm curious how much.
Yeah. So
how much that would end up being.
If you look at that issue 5911, the very last comment that I've added, there's a link to a GitHub project, which is basically an htaccess parser in PHP. That might help. Like, it's pretty flexible. It allows for a lot of things. Like, it parses line by line. It recognizes blocks. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it looks like there's 3 key things in an htaccess file. The options that turn off indexing, CGI, and includes, that's one. There's the overriding the handler for all files, and then there's turning off the PHP engine entirely. So there's 3 things, which seems like that would be manageable doing in a requirements check.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, I would lean towards that direction, and maybe
Yeah, and then consider the rest of it for generic approach. So I haven't raised an issue for that. We discussed it briefly during the last week's dev meeting, but I didn't raise an issue. I'll file it as a follow-up to the issue that introduced that change, the fix for PHP 8. So, and hopefully we can do it over the weekend.
yeah. Speaking of doing it over the weekend, Code Sprint ? Is like a thing for the weekend. Thus far, like the release looks really good to me. I think that we're like in a really good space, and something like better checking these htaccess files could probably be done in a bug fix release. It's not really a new feature. It's helping people update safely. Like I don't think that this needs to be a minor release thing. But I wouldn't mind trying to make it happen before 124 comes out, especially since now is when we need it, because both 123.2 and 124 have htaccess file changes. So I think that would be a great thing to take a look at issue 5911, try to target that for getting completed before Sunday, if we can, just to make better messaging in the status report if you're running PHP 8. Plus some of these other things, like maybe we could hit all of them at once, but if not, like I think it would be great if we could focus on literally just the one that that is most likely to have the problem right now, which is PHP 8 and turning off the PHP engine inside the files directory. I think even then, like this whole this particular one, like turning off the PHP engine, I think that it's redundant with the set handler thing. I think that they're both, it's just like a belt and suspenders type situation where turning off the file handler already is adding one protection that prevents the execution of PHP files, and then the second one is just like, and if we can do this too, it's better safe than sorry. But yeah,
The one in the root.htaccess, it does I think the reason why I found it was because I noticed that the override for max input vars wasn't working on PHP 8, so that one is possibly also something that they're going to notice if they change to PHP 8 and it's not there.
One thing I think I'm glad that this is not like a controversial decision that needs to be made, which is usually where we get tied up. But this will be a slightly technical challenge to write something that validates the htaccess files, because there's three things in these in the files directory htaccess file, but the one in the root has a lot more. Like invalidating it could be a lot trickier. Yeah, well, anyway, that's a technical challenge to see how we can do that cleanly, because there's a lot to validate. Yeah, I think that that's a great idea. 5911. Try to take a look at that. As for scheduling a code sprint, let's see. Sunday is a good. Well, Sunday is kind of like the last day. That's really kind of putting it off. I can take a look on getting things in tomorrow as one round. Saturday is a little bit questionable for me, but then Sunday is totally open. And here Monday, in the United States, Monday is Martin Luther King Jr. Day, which is a holiday for many of us. But that doesn't affect the release of 124. It's always on the 15th, regardless. So Friday and Saturday or Sunday are the best days for me. Of course, other core committers, if they can be around, we can make some things happen on Saturday as well. Okay. Let's see. I don't think there's anything really questionable for 124 other than, I mean, now we have this thing. I mentioned before the meeting started that I'd also like to look a little bit at the filter permissions feature that we added, that makes it so you can, at the top of the filter or permissions page, there's now a quick filter box that lets you type in the name of a permission or description, and it shortens up the list. I'd like to improve the reset button. The reset button right now doesn't use JavaScript and just reloads the page. Or actually, it may even just be a link that removes the query string from the top of the page, and that resets the filter. But to have better compatibility with some contrib modules or anything else that modifies the permissions page, that reset button should also use JavaScript just to empty out the text box and then reset the filter without reloading the page. And that would make it less likely to interfere with any other modifications on the page. Not to mention, if the user had actually made some changes and then wanted to reset the thing, reset the filter, that could be frustrating potentially if the changes that they made on the form got lost because the page reloaded. Let's see. Anything else people would like to mention for 124 kind of as their last minute wish list items?
Just the PHP related, just switching the sandboxes should get in if we agree.
Yeah, that's not even, I mean, I think we can do that almost right away. So there's an issue to bump our sandboxes that we use on Tugboat from PHP 7.2 for some reason. Why are we running that version up to 8.1? And that really can be done before or after release, because as soon as we merge it, all sandboxes after that will be against 1.x. So
Yeah, it's more like an infrastructure / CI thing rather than but it should get into the 1.x. And also our demo sites are running on 5.7.4, I think. Should we update that or leave them as they are? Or just let me spin up that one because I can't remember. I think I checked that.
Yeah, I don't know quite about that one, because so I'm totally like, yes, the pull request sandboxes should run the latest version of PHP, because if there are bugs in the latest version of PHP, we want to be able to see them in the sandboxes. But for the demo sites that are like from our homepage, the public way of trying out Backdrop, I want to make sure that that is completely solid. And so I know PHP 7.4 is completely solid, but 8.1, you know, there's probably a thing or two still out there. Maybe that's good though. I don't know, you know, that we would get reports from people that are trying out Backdrop for the first time, but I also don't want to put that burden on a first time user.
Yeah. So leave the demo sandboxes on 7.4 then for a while longer.
Yeah, maybe just for like a month, you know, as we, you know, let's just first do the sandboxes and
I
then
think
we'll follow up.
especially as people can install contrib modules in the demo, and not every contrib module is 8.1 friendly.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, well, if there's nothing else for 124, that lets us transition nicely to an issue that I wanted to talk about related to PHP 8.1 or just 8 and higher. I'm going to share my screen because this is a difficult thing to describe. So this has to do with PHP now. Whenever in PHP 8 and higher, they started type hinting a lot of their internal functions, like these string length functions, that if you pass a null variable into string length or MB string length, then it throws a PHP notice saying a string was expected, a null value was given. Previous versions of PHP had no problem. If you pass in a null value, it considers that to be an empty length string. Now that's changed. If you pass null in, it throws a warning. And the suggestion is that we don't normally call MB string length directly, nor do we call normal string length directly. Instead, we have this wrapper around this function that is backdrop string length. And the suggestion is simply that if we get a null value or something that's not a string, then we return the string length as 0. So basically, we maintain the previous functionality that if something else besides the string is passed in, then we consider it to be empty. This actually might need to say if is null, actually, because if an array was passed in or something like that, I think even previously it would throw an error. But anyway, the suggestion is we should make backdrop string length work the same way as it did on older versions of PHP. I'm personally a little bit on the fence about this because this isn't like, it's not a backwards compatibility change that we made. It's one that PHP created. And a lot of PHP changes we have no control over fixing. This happens to be kind of an exception to the rule where we happen to already have wrappers around this PHP function as well as wrappers around, there's a couple other ones, string to upper, string to lower, and substring. So there's 4 of these PHP functions that we have wrappers around that we could potentially provide this backwards compatibility ability. But that's not true for most functions in PHP, which all started doing this in PHP 8 and higher, that any function that takes a string all now is cast to only allow strings and not null values. I maybe need to do an inventory of what those other functions are, but I think that there are quite a few. And so I'm tempted to say, this is providing a compatibility for 4 functions out of like potentially like 100 is kind of like, we can't comprehensively fix it. And it's a problem that PHP created. Like maybe we should just say contrib should update and not and have to deal with the problem comprehensively. Greg counters that might not line up with our values. So yeah, I think that this is a great thing to discuss. I'd love to hear people's take on it. First of all, is my explanation mostly clear? Looks like
I'm reading.
Yeah, I can see that.
Did you talk about adding a backwards compatible wrapper function?
Well, for all functions or for well, that's what this is that we already have a wrapper function named backdrop string length. And
right, but this changes.
Yeah, if the text parameter there, if you pass null to it in previous versions, it wouldn't complain. Now it does. That's the thing.
And it's not
Yeah,
backdrop complaints, it's PHP complaints if you're running PHP 8 or higher.
Yeah.
And the solution could be as simple as type hinting the parameter there in the function itself. But if we do that, then PHP 5.6 complains.
Yeah.
And it has a node message as well that string expected, string provided, something like that, which is like very odd message.
What's wrong with this?
So what's wrong with it?
We have more functions. If you scroll up and down and expand them, we have the other functions are right there. So we need to do the same here.
Yes. So first of all, you have to do it to string to upper, string to lower, and Oh, hang on. There's another
The,
one.
the one- the
that's
other
like-
one is up. Yeah. Yeah, there.
Yeah,
So-
but the thing that is that gives me pause here is that like every function in PHP that expects a string is now all cast, which includes things like, okay, so preg replace, MB string length, normal string length, string to upper. Every function that takes a string now, this error will happen on all of them. And there's
Right.
like lots of functions that take strings in PHP. And every single one of these functions will now have this. If you pass in a null value, it's going to throw a PHP notice.
And what did it do before?
It just silently converted it to a string and just considered it to be an
Can't
empty string.
we just do that before we call all these functions?
Yes, and that's what I'm suggesting should be done, is that if we can't solve it for everywhere, then we should just tell contrib modules and core that it should just pass in a string, or make sure that it's been cast to a string before you call the function. And the PHP notices like this, it throws them because it suspects that you've done something wrong. You should, if you're expecting a string, it should have always been a string before you called the function in the first place.
Yeah, that's not how triple contrib works, though. There's a lot of sloppy typing.
Right, and that's the thing, is that PHP has ever so slowly been becoming more and more strict, like
Yeah.
over a decade.
Okay,
Right?
so
And
so
this
for
is
core, you have no
continuation of it.
problem just fixing all of these instances to make sure that everything we pass in is always a
Right.
string.
And to be
But-
clear, that's the actual problem that's been reported here. This doesn't happen in core. This is coming from feeds module. That feeds module had this problem, and that if we fix this, then feeds module will stop throwing the error.
Well,
When
that
feeds
exa-
module could fix it in itself instead.
Yeah, I feel like we should fix it because that's our wrapper function. They're not calling string length. Like if they called the PHP function directly and had a problem, they would have to fix it. But they're calling our function, and I think we should add a little bit of assistance in the backdrop function.
Which means that we better add wrappers, add the same fix to the other 3 wrappers, and then just
It's just
Nice
anything
that.
that's a backdrop function, I think people should be able to trust.
unless, unless, and this is a nice segue, we drop support for PHP 5.6, which is the next thing to discuss.
Yeah, I think we should do that in backdrop too. It'll be so clean to just be like, remove all of this stuff, add backdrop too.
Well, I mean, we could remove this check perhaps on backdrop too, but like PHP 5.6 will, I mean, it'll probably fade into the past before backdrop 2
In the
comes
next
out.
2 years? I don't know if any of these sites that are running backdrop on PHP 5.6 are going to update their servers.
Well,
before
here's
then.
here's the suggestion, the alternative that Craig's talking about, is that you can type hint inside the argument definition saying, hey, this is going to be a string. But Greg, I don't know that this really fixes anything, really. It just moves the error up instead of the error being thrown here in PHP 8 for MB string length. It'll just throw an error sooner at backdrop string length. So it's not really providing a compatibility layer. It's just making our function complain at contrib instead of PHP's
Yeah, right.
function complain at
Yeah.
And then PHP 5.6 will give that odd message that says must be an instance of string given, which is just, yeah.
Not
really odd.
helpful.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, let's not. I mean, yeah. Putting PHP 5.6 aside, like this doesn't solve the PHP 8 problem
Yeah,
either.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think any backdrop function, we should add it in, and we can add a little code comment that could say like deprecate when or remove when PHP 5.6
Yeah.
support is dropped, so that we can come find it later. But I don't think we can drop support for PHP 5.6 quickly enough, and I think we should fix this quickly. If that makes any sense.
Yeah. Well, again, support for PHP 5.6 has nothing to do with the fix that is being suggested.
Right.
fix, yeah, because the PHP 5.6 and PHP 7 both can pass in null values into this function and then into MB string length and not complain whatsoever. So this is a PHP 8 and higher thing that if we add this, we will probably never be able to get rid of it because unless it's because it would be an API break that
Right,
we're
for Backdrop
allowing
2.
null and then right, yeah,
Yeah. That's what I was thinking.
So maybe the solution there is, Nate, you would prefer instead of not is string to check for is null specifically? Add a comment that says add to do remove this in 2.0 and then do it
Yeah.
for all 4 functions, right?
Yeah.
Yep. I do think that we should be at least more targeted and say is null so that if an array gets passed in here or a full-fledged node object or something like that, it should still throw an error because it was previously as well.
Yep, okay.
Yeah, be more specific. I guess also do it to all 4 of them. I mean, because it's either all 4 of them or none at all.
Yeah.
It's one or the other.
All right, I'll add a comment in that issue for TM Luna to implement those changes there.
Yeah. And then this, of course, is a great idea always. Like we should type pent the PHP doc absolutely
Yeah.
everywhere. Yeah.
Mhm.
Which I've been noticing now that PHP CS is complaining about the lack of type penting. Type penting has been coming in almost every pull request now. Like anybody touches the function, they're like, oh crap, because PHP CS starts complaining about the type penting on any function that's been. I think if the parameters have been modified, it complains about them, which is great. Okay. Yeah, any other thoughts or feedback? Sounds like this might be something that's like it's esoteric enough that it doesn't really bother most people. Okay.
The other thing is the issue for dropping PHP 5.6 is 5920. Jen, can you just add a comment to that issue with your concerns?
Yeah.
Because we did establish a policy, then we need to change the policy.
Was it 50? What was it? 5620?
59, where is it? 5920.
5920. Okay.
It is slated for, or at least that I have it for 2.x future already. No, I was looking at the wrong issue. No, that's not.
Yeah, thanks for these stats, Greg. These are pretty interesting. Actually, I'm going to share my screen again just to show this for the recording. So this is usage information. This is where is this coming from? Packagist?
Yes, PHP
what-
statistics. There used to be a blog article that they would write for each year, but they was can't forget they deprecated that article and they put these stats available there, which anyone can check every time. And as you can see, the 5.x and 7.0 combined are like 1% globally.
Yeah, my understanding here though is that Packagist
Packages
is the
only, yeah.
that's for when a user requests a package through Composer, right?
Exactly.
That's the statistic they're reporting, but Composer 2 doesn't support PHP 5, which is probably why the numbers are so small, right? So
Yeah,
this
and
is
if you
probably,
scroll, yeah.
yeah,
So if you scroll down, the other statistics may be more valuable there. It's
Mhm.
like, and what is also valuable and was the drive for the policy that we established is if you scroll down to which is just a copy paste of the table that you have provided. This is the one. So basically, CentOS is not supported anymore, and the most recent non-end of life Linux versions basically dictate. So Debian version 10 is basically one that is still supporting 7.2, and that's when Herb pointed out that then maybe we should drop anything below that, because there's no actively supported Linux distribution that has, maybe it's too bold to do 7 and 7.1, but at least 5.6, there's no actively supported Linux distribution that has it.
Yep. Yeah, and you're right. Same with PHP 7 and 7.1. That yep. Yeah, it's interesting. This policy of supporting the lowest version of PHP supported by any major distribution in the past has been really tugging
Favorable.
us backwards, like for a very long time. And this is the first time ever that jumping forward seems like it's potentially risky to follow this policy that we've been using for a long time. Because yeah, like you say, like it's going to drop, all PHP 5 support, which in theory looks like it's like 1/4 of all PHP usage according to W3.
So maybe then we need to revise the policy, if not drop support.
Yeah. And as time goes on, we'll our own telemetry, which I think you have in here as well. Yeah. So there's I mean, our own telemetry will start being a better thing for us to measure because it's the one that actually matters. But telemetry is so opt-in oriented right now, and we're only collecting like information from like maybe 1% of Backdrop websites.
So there's,
that it's not quite enough for us to really base our decisions on yet. Still informative.
We have 2,300 sites reporting back in usage stats, and these are only 325 sites. So it's just, I don't know, 15% of the sites.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, Martin making the exact same comment. Yeah.
So I'll rename that issue to or change the policy.
Yeah, or change the policy. Yeah, we may need to do that. Yeah, there's some like subtlety here in PHP 5.6 in that maybe where I'm getting the the read on the support for PHP 5 is that you can still go to shared hosting providers and opt into PHP 5.6, and things like DDev and Lando still support PHP 5.6. And so what I'm thinking here is that most tooling I've seen still supports PHP 5.6, even though it's end of life. And the reason the tooling supports it is, of course, for like old software and old websites and stuff like that. So, maybe that's not a very good basis for my opinion on like how widely supported is PHP 5.6 at this point, because it's probably being used just for that legacy software. Yeah. So yeah, this is a discussion because we need a new policy or we need to drop support because right now we're not following our own policy.
Exactly. And then in the few minutes that remain, I just wanted to bring up this related issue as well, which is 5927, which is just make Backdrop core support PHP 8.2. And I was wondering, like, are we gonna have a separate branch which is only testing 8.2? Because currently our CI tests for 8.1, right? And there's no point in testing 7.4, or maybe there is, I don't know. So maybe a decision: do we make this a meta and then file separate issues, or different commits in the same pull request that adds support? So I was thinking basically the first step would be to have the all CI tests pass in 8.2. And I think this is what we've done for the previous versions when we started supporting 8. I think IndigoZilla just removed, for the sake of brevity, initially removed for the first commits the checks for 5.6 and 7 whatever. So we quickly made sure that all tests pass in 8.2, and then we added the tests for 5.6 and 7 so that we make sure that we don't break previous versions.
Mhm.
And then I'm sure that there's going to be follow-up issues because we're still getting issues for 8 and 8.1, but at least the very first supported thing should be a one-go thing.
Yeah,
Just fix all the failures.
I think I'm in favor of that same approach. That it depends on the scope of exactly how large it gets. Honestly, like if it's and especially if it's easy to read changes, like hey, we have to cast this variable first or check its value. Then yeah, like one large pull request that's on the order of hundreds of lines. I think that that's a good way to
Yep.
go. And we can and like you say, the pull request should go ahead and modify the testing the
The
what's
fragments.
the
The
Git the
fragment.
GitHub Actions YAML file
Yep.
to like bump up the PHP version 8.2, and yeah, like you say, also disable the other PHP versions while we're iterating on that to get it so that it runs the tests for us. And then yeah, if we can get all tests passing in one go, great. But as soon as it starts becoming unwieldy to review or something like that, those should
Yep.
definitely be split out into separate issues.
Yep. Okay. Cool. Makes sense.
Tim, so much happening. Turkeys and now tractors. What a fun window to be next to.
Exciting. Yeah.
Okay. Anything else for today? We're at the top of the hour. Okay. Well, I'll see some of you over the weekend as we prep for the release of 124. We'll try to get those last couple of things that we talked about buttoned up. And yeah, 124. And then next meeting, we'll be starting to look at probably we'll be looking at the repercussions of 124, if any, have occurred, and talking about bug fix release. But then we'll start turning our sights towards the next release, 125, which will be exciting. So thank you so much for being here, and yeah, we'll see you next week.